single chapter. And this chapter essentially tells the story of a girl born as an abandoned orphan, rescued by adoption, falls in love, is enriched by that love. That's really what we'll see today, but spurns that love for harlotry. So it builds up really nice, and then what we'll see, Lord willing, starting next week is the sad part. So what we get here is Cinderella. So let's enjoy Cinderella before it becomes, I don't know, the Wicked Witch of the West or whatever it is, okay? So I would, and I'm stealing this from Tim Keller because I liked how he did this. He calls this section the smitten lover. Now, as we'll see, this is an oversimplification of this section, but I do think it gets at the heart of what Ezekiel is proclaiming. What we need to see here is God as an exuberant, loving, as we'll see, father and groom. What's made this passage so difficult is the mixing of the metaphors, especially for modern readers. And so we'll see that as we go. So what we see here in this parable, it's obvious. The girl in the parable is Israel. More specifically, as we'll see, she is Jerusalem. Now, when we say Jerusalem, we're saying Israel. But Jerusalem is the center of it. So I'll try to say Jerusalem, but if I say Israel, you'll see it. So it begins, we see God as a loving father. So we get the birth and the adoption of the city, and then him as a lover, and that he richly adorns his bride. So let's start verses 1-5 is Jerusalem's birth. And you see this interesting language. You go down to verse 3. Thus says Lord God to Jerusalem. So there's your context why the woman is Jerusalem, not Israel, but it's the same thing. Your origin and your birth are of the land of the Canaanites. Your father was an Amorite, your mother a Hittite. Now, right away, you can see that it's a parable, but not quite like Jesus's parable. He's playing with the language a little bit. You know, the temptation of Jesus' parable is every little detail has a spiritual meaning to it, and I oftentimes we go too far with that. Sometimes maybe not, but often we can. It's a little more complicated than that. You cannot be the offspring of three people. You are the Canaanites, the Ammonites, and the Hittites, right? That's not the way it works. So you can see that it's a parable of Jerusalem's birth, but he's emphasizing something. Now, if you know your Bible, you know that this isn't true. If I were to ask you, from where did Jerusalem or Israel stem? Well, you're going to go back to the story of Abraham, and you would say, well, the parents, if you will, in terms of nationality, race, ethnicity, whatnot, land, Abraham stems from two places. His story is centered on two places. Which is Ur the Chaldees, Babylon, if that helps, and then Canaan. Because his story is centered, now I know there's Egypt, but that's a temporary blip. So you're going to say that the story of Abraham, and therefore the story of Israel, is born among the Babylonians and the Canaanites. But here, it is the Canaanites, the Hittites, who are farther north, and they have a pretty powerful and large kingdom at one point. And then the Ammonites. And the Ammonites, around this time, are, you remember we talked about the Moabites a few weeks ago in Ezekiel? Go north a little bit of the Moabites. So they're east of Israel, if you will. Okay. I had a map up, and I couldn't get a good one that showed all three with Abraham and Israel and all that, so I just dropped it. So they're not actually from the Ammonites and the Canaanites and Hittites. What is going on here? Well, what scholars will say is he is emphasizing probably not land, but something else. Remember that he is talking to Jerusalem, not just Israel. So if we take Jerusalem as a city, when Israel takes Jerusalem, it has a history that predates Israel by about half a millennium. And you remember who occupied Jerusalem Remember, David takes Jerusalem for himself. Israel's all around it. It was the Jebusites. If you look at the history of Israel, it is in Canaan, of course, but it's the Ammonites and the Hittites and others who sort of have a say in there. And so that seems to be, again, he's emphasizing Jerusalem. So what I think we need to do here is to see these cities, and of course one is an entire region, the Canaanites, is not that he's being specific about their national origin, that they stem from these people groups, but rather to say that when you use the language of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, what he's saying is people of depravity, evil. After 9/11, I bet if you go in 2002, President George W. Bush's State of the Union address, I think it was in 2002, where he gave the axis of evil speech. And right away, which is a very good phrase for what he was trying to communicate. It was a bold phrase at the time. And that included Iran, North Korea, and Iraq, and maybe some others. And we as Americans kind of knew who he had in mind there. I think that's what you're having going on here. Is when you came in Jerusalem, there was a history there. And Jerusalem was the offspring of wicked pagans. And then you came in, and what happened? You were conceived, Jerusalem, and what did they do to you? They abandoned you. They left you out there as a parent would in the pagan world do to their child. And that's verses 4 and 5. Upon Israel's birth, they were abandoned by their parents. They didn't want to have anything to do with them. And now this rhetoric is strange to us because of our customs. We have now in the state of Kentucky, at least for like the last 5 years or so, baby boxes. I've actually looked into us possibly doing something like that. I don't think we will qualify, but a lot of, I think there's over 50 of them in the state, maybe over 100, something like that. I know the legislator really involved in that. I think she's gone to all of them in Kentucky, no matter where it is. She's very involved with it, pro-life. She's an awesome legislator. But what is the thing behind baby boxes? I think we're actually getting, the idea comes from South Korea. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's right. Is that if you have a mother who within, I think it's 30 days, she has this baby and she goes, you know what, I just can't do this. What that child or that mother can do is lay the baby in the box and a alarm is triggered so that those who run this can come immediately rescue the child, call ambulance, hospitals, whatnot. So you'll find them at fire departments, police stations, hospitals, doctors' places like that. And it's a way to rescue children. That's the way we think, isn't it? We could never imagine a culture to where a child is born, parents look at that child and say, that's not for us. Here, let's take this child and just leave him out in the woods and we'll just move on with our lives. But that was the world of the ancient world. In fact, we have a letter from 1 BC. So just when Jesus was a little boy, remember we dated his birth around 4 BC, something like that. So Jesus is a toddler. We have a letter from a soldier writing from, he's on the battlefront. He writes home to his pregnant wife. And in the letter, he's just talking about, it's just regular everyday stuff. Oh, by the way, before I forget, when you give birth, if it's a boy, keep it. If it's a girl, expose it. And he went on and talked about other things. It wasn't like, now, honey, I wish I could be there to look you in the eyes and talk softly to you, but I'm just not sure we're ready to be adults yet and to raise children. That's not it. It's sort of like, it's a girl, get rid of it. Very nonchalant. No one even thought anything of that. Actually, I believe that one of the clearest signs of paganism, evil paganism, is especially when moms turn on their babies. Yeah. And now they're, yeah. And why is it girls? You have this problem where you particularly in that culture, our culture too, is you're going to pass things on to a male heir, essentially, particularly in their culture more than ours. So if you have a girl, you can't do that. So you abort the baby girl. Well, it doesn't take a rocket science to figure out you're going to have too many boys. In a society where men outnumber women, you need to give the boys something to do. What's going to happen? Well, you're going to put them in the war. You're going to put them right into the military. You'll give them something to do. You're also going to have an epidemic of loneliness. And when you have lonely men, they become violent, destructive men. Doesn't this sound familiar, particularly in inner cities with the breakdown of families? Yeah. Yeah, this is the United States of America. I'll go ahead I wanted to suggest that we're a different society. We're not. Right now in the state of Kentucky, a former student in the UK is on trial or been arrested or whatever for basically doing what the Romans did with her little baby. Right now, it's happening right now, and dare I mention the front page news in terms of a trial happening where it is women in solidarity who, if I'm being charitable, it's women saying we just need to be heard with our struggle with depression after. Okay, if I'm being charitable, but I'm sorry, no amount of depression or anything else justifies the murder of children. Under no circumstances should that ever be tolerated or accepted. I mean, do not murder is a pretty clear commandment. And we should be shocked, ashamed, and angry that, oh, this is just news today. A bunch of women gather around a courtroom, held up their little heart symbols and say, we stand with the murderer. It's not okay. It's not. I don't know all the cases of all the details of the case. Don't need to. But this is where we are right here. A demonically lost society is one. It's bad enough when dads and men turn against children. But we already know men are violent. But when it is moms who do it, we've really crossed a line. Of course, we've been doing that since 1973. But now in the Bible, there are examples of mothers giving up their children, but not like this. And those examples, one would be the mother of Moses. Now, why is the mother of Moses giving up her baby? Safety. So she is being a good mom there, isn't she? She's saying, like, my boy is in danger. The last thing I want is to let him go. But if the only hope he has is to put him in the ark and maybe God, because it's the word basket is ark, same thing as Noah's ark. And she does that. And through God's providence and grace, Moses, which was an Egyptian name, is a Hebrew too. I think it's Hatshepsut, but that's neither here nor there. She adopts him as her own. The other example is Hagar. Remember the story of Hagar? Hagar's kicked out. She's heading back to Egypt, so the opposite of the Moses story. And you remember what she does is Abraham only gives her like a gallon of water to go through the desert. And they're out of water, and they're going to die of thirst. Remember what she does? She finds the only shade she can, a bush. And she lays her baby in the bush, and she goes off in the distance because she can't bear to hear her son cry. Thinking, this is the last thing I'll hear on earth. It's the sound of my son crying. That is a mother who's at a desperate brink of destruction and death. But that's not this. This is, oh, we saw the baby, we don't want the baby anymore. And you'll notice that the baby is described, particularly when God speaks that the baby was found in its blood. In fact, it emphasizes that. There's a lot of debate as to what that means exactly. From what I've seen, the best explanation is legally in that culture, when you cut the umbilical cord, you're assuming legal responsibility for that child. So once the baby is born, it's cast out. The parents are saying legally, we don't have anything to do with this. So God finds this baby exposed in its blood. And I think that is the explanation behind it. So, what's that? Yeah. And some births can be even bloodier. I think you're right. And of course, it's interesting, now that you say that, it's interesting that blood makes things unclean. And God finds, I hadn't thought about it. This is good stuff. Thank you, Don. God finds Jerusalem unclean. Oh, that's good stuff, isn't it? I'd hate to credit Don with that, but I have to. Boy, that'll preach, won't it? We're going to get to adoption. That's what adoption is. He makes clean what is unclean. He purifies what is filthy. Oh, it's good stuff. That's really good stuff. But you see it there again, verse 6, in your blood. And then here we see God adopting Jerusalem. Verse 7, I made you flourish like a plant of the field. So mixing of metaphors. Also connects you back to chapter 15 with the vine. You grew up, became tall, and arrived at full adornment, and you reach maturity. So we jump from the infant abandoned and God's compassion on Jerusalem, and now she is grown into maturity. And so it is God who, as a loving father, raises her. He teaches her how to talk and how to walk and the things that a loving parent does. And God's saying that, like, I did that for you, Jerusalem. Like, I didn't need to do that. And no one would have minded if you just fell off the face of the earth, because the Ammonites and the Hittites and the Canaanites, they would come and just take the city back. They don't care about you. But I saw you, and I showed pity upon you. And I took you into my arms, and I raised you, and I fed you, and I protected you, and I raised you to be a great plant, to grow tall and to be strong. And so then we come in to verses 8 to 14, where she grows independent. And this is where the metaphor does start to change. So I passed by you again, so you can see this is a separate sort of thing here. And I saw you, behold, you were of age for love. So that is, of course, she was ready to get married. Now, their culture is very different than ours. I think the average young adult now is getting married. Last I saw for men is like 27. It's getting even closer to 30. That's not good, y'all. It's not good. My wife and I, we know a lot of our friends who are roughly our age, give or take 5 years, with like little ones. And we always think, oh, I loved being a dad of toddlers. Genuinely. I don't want to do that again. I am too old. Okay. I've got a niece and nephew. They're little guys. I love them to death. They're cool kids. Couldn't do it again. Couldn't do it again. I need a vacation from my vacation when I hang out with the niece and nephew. You know what I mean? Yeah, I love them. They're great. But it's, they could climb the walls. If they ever were bitten by a radioactive spider and they became spider kids, oh my goodness. Don?
Well, some people disappointed, but when your grandkids start playing kickball, no matter how old you are.
Oh, I know. Phew. That's what I tell the kids, like, mature, get married, because I can't have grandkids, 20 years from now, So, but you can see that she's ready for marriage. And in fact, let me just show there's a little nugget in there. If you go to like the 1970s, 80s, whatever, and you interviewed, let's say, juniors in high school, girls, and you say, what are your future plans? You get out of high school. Almost all of them will say, I want to get married and have children. If you were to do that now, the juniors, would any of them say, I want to get married and have children? Now, you tell me which society is healthy. But that's neither. Well, it is here and there. But anyways, so she's of love. And notice the language, I spread the corner of my garment over you and covered your nakedness. This is the language of marriage. So God is, the metaphor, the parable is switching from God as a loving father to God as a pursuing, loving groom. Now, on the surface, the idea of covering you with the corner of your garment, it sounds like an act of charity by which you covered nakedness. But we see in the parable, God's already done that. Right? He did it as father. But this reflects an ancient Near Eastern culture or custom wherein to cover someone's to cover someone up with the corner of your garment was like, in our language, like a proposal. When a man does that, he's essentially saying, I want to enter into a marital covenant with you, and I am willing to take the responsibility for you. This does show up in the Bible. In Ruth chapter 3, remember that Ruth sneaks in, right, where all the men are, the harvest, all that. And as Naomi says, girl, this is your shot. Just go up him and say, you have beautiful blue eyes. We should get married. And she does it. Give her credit. She initiated it. And Boaz says, who are you? And she answered, I am Ruth, your servant. Spread your wings over your servant. Literally, cover me with the corner of your garments. So she's asking, would you consider me as a wife? So, in chapter 3, if we broaden out, it uses she uncovers his feet. That language suggests intimacy of some type. That doesn't mean necessarily they did, but that it was available. Almost as if she's inviting, let's be married now, which is seen through intimacy. Now, in Ruth, they get married in chapter 4.
Naomi set the thing up.
Oh, yeah. She's the matchmaker in it. Yeah. And one of the difficulties we have in reading a story like Ruth is we read it through 21st century lens. It is really difficult for us to put ourselves in the plight of a widow in the ancient world. We touched on it just barely at the widow of Zarephath this past Sunday morning. You are in a desperate situation. And the best thing for you is to remarry. And so what you get, because of the death rolls are so high in this world, and I think we'll see the situation this upcoming Sunday in our study of Elisha, is you'll find a lot of like younger women married to older men. Because if you're married and your husband goes off the war and he dies, well, who's left? It's likely going to be the older men who have survived the wars and survived all that. Their wives have died perhaps of natural causes or whatever. And so you see that sort of, I think that's what happens with the woman in the story we'll see Sunday morning. I can't prove it, but I suspect it. So when we read stories like Ruth, we read it, well, what about true love waits? Yes, but don't, and let's not forget, Ruth takes place during the age of the judges. Oh, yeah.
I worked with a girl that only met her husband once. They were betrothed for 30 years. She went back to India and married back.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's happening. But what God is describing here, or what Ezekiel is describing here, is a marital covenant between God and Israel, or Jerusalem. Now remember, in the Bible, idolatry is often connected to adultery. So idolatry then is like spiritual adultery. And I find that to be a helpful way to approach idolatry, to think about what it is. It is betraying a covenant with God, your lover, if you will. And that's what you have described here. This is not a novel idea to Ezekiel. You probably know this. Isaiah, for example, for your maker is your husband. The Lord Almighty is his name. The Holy One of Israel is your Redeemer. You can see all the metaphors and everything in there. Of course, this is a theology of Ruth right here. Your maker is your husband. He is your Redeemer. That's Boaz, basically. But in here it's God towards Israel. Jeremiah, return, O backsliding children. Now notice here, God as Father. Again, we struggle with mixing these metaphors. A dad who's also husband, that's weird to us. We don't like that. But this is just a mixing of metaphors. This would have been common. I am married to you. So I think there's one more. Hosea. Oh, yeah, here's the classic. The story of Hosea is a longer version of this passage in Ezekiel. And I will betroth you to me forever. I will betroth you to me in righteousness and in justice, in steadfast love and in mercy. I will betroth you to me in faithfulness, and you shall know the Lord. Of course, in Hosea, the prophet marries a harlot who returns to her harlotry. And Hosea is always going back to get her. And that is a real-life parable of what God has done with Israel. Well, as you know, this imagery is picked up in the New Testament. Yet it's not so much about God and Israel, it's about God and the church. So in this, I went too far, didn't I? Did I go too far? There we go. Here, it's the passage about wives submit to your husbands, whatnot. But notice Paul's language is, the husband is the head of the wife as Christ is the head of the church. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so wives submit to your husbands. You can see he has a theology of marriage. Right? That's what he cares about, is marriage is theology lived in daily life. So if we can't submit to each other, it's because we're not submitting to our groom. And he'll go on, husbands, love your wives. Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. So the bride here is the church and the groom is Christ. And then how's the Bible end? The marriage supper of the Lamb. Well, it's a reception for a wedding. It's Christ as the groom, us as the bride. So then what we get here is in verses 9 to 14 is God lavishes his bride with affection. And he does it primarily through gifts, through attention, through affirmation, through provision. If only I can think of a good application for husbands, you know? So verse 9, he cleanses and anoints her. Verse 10, he clothes her in the finest of garments. In verses 11 to 13, he adorns her in the finest of jewelry. I can't say that word, make fun of me if you want to. Jewelry. Now, these verses do read a little weird. So verse 11, I adorn you with ornaments and put bracelets on your wrists, a chain on your neck. We'll call that a necklace. A chain on a woman's neck does not come off very good to modern readers. Is that fair? Honey, I got you a chain for your neck. You know, it's like mush. I don't recommend. Don't call your necklace a chain for your neck. There it is, the old ball and chain. You get those for husbands, not for wives. Yeah, you guys are. Oh man. It goes on before you fire me. Verse 12, I put a ring on your nose, earrings in your ears, and a beautiful crown on your head. Now, ladies, you're like, you had me at earrings and a crown. What's this nose stuff? If we see someone with a nose ring, chances are you have conjured up certain thoughts and judgments. Let's be honest. Particularly now. That may not have been the case, 20 years ago. My brother had an eyebrow ring years ago. And he was playing flag football, and he looked down, and he was bleeding. And he reached up, the ring had got ripped out of his eyebrow. And he had a scar for the longest time. And so he calls us, like we're going to be compassionate. We're like, well, dummy, what did you think was going to happen? You deserve every bit of that. This has nothing to do with this text. I just need to get that off my chest, apparently. I think it's this. I could be wrong. Now, if you see someone with that right now, for the most part, there does seem to be a certain pattern of behavior associated with that. But what I want to do is show you that some of this is weird to us. It would have been common in the ancient world, and it reflects marriage covenant, but also a marriage of a wealthy husband. He lavishes attention and affection for her. So let me give you an example of a ring in the nose in particular. Genesis 24, this is Isaac. Then I asked her, whose daughter are you? And she said, the daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son, whom Milcah bore to him. So I put the ring on her nose and the bracelets on her arms. This would have been common for affection and everything else. And then you see the crown on the head. You could translate tiara. This is more than just a tiara. I think crown is a good translation because in verse 13 you see the language of royalty. That you are renowned, you are in royalty. And he advances her reputation in the last part of verse 13 going to verse 14. So we have here is a husband who lavishes grace and favor upon his wife. He spoils her. Look, I think you could simplify your marriage, and if husband and wife spoiled each other, you're probably going to be okay. Just Mark is really helpful. They're cruising right now. He always says that each spouse should try to outdo the other in kindness and love. I think that's a helpful way of thinking about it. And that is what the groom is doing here. So we have the ideal love story. We love romance tales, and here is a good one. The groom is generous towards his bride, Jerusalem, and lavishes her with wealth, honor, and most importantly, love. Well, it's all going to go south starting next week, but at least we have the love story. So this is Cinderella part 1. Unfortunately, Cinderella part 2, they don't live happily ever after, which is the section we are in Ezekiel. It's all judgment. What I'd like to do in the time we have is that this passage is used a lot, particularly by evangelicals. I'd like to briefly talk about adoption, because this is a beautiful picture of adoption and how we think about it as evangelicals. One of the things you'll find is where there are an increase in Christianity, there is a decrease in orphans. Where there's an increase of Christianity, there's an increase in generosity. If you don't believe me, I want you to look at Christian-leaning wealthy people, if you will, and secular-leaning rich people, and look at their tax returns and look at their charitable giving. It's night and day. Religion, I would say Christianity in particular, encourages this sort of thing. I don't know, did I put this up? No, I forgot to put it up here. J.I. Packer, in his great classic, Knowing God, he summarized the gospel into 3 words. So if you want to, if you're in a hurry and you want to get the gospel in as quick as you can, here's 3 words. It is adoption through propitiation. Now that is cheating because you have like a $1 million word thrown in there. So now you have to explain propitiation. But I don't see where he's wrong in that. We are adopted into the family of God by the means of Jesus' propitiatory work upon the cross. It is a bit of mixing of metaphors, but that's what you get in the Gospels, what you get in the Bible in general. So it's a blood sacrifice that welcomes us into the family of God. And so it's no wonder then that we see this language in the Bible. So for example, Romans 8, for you did not receive the spirit of slavery to fall back into fear. You receive the spirit of adoption as sons. What do you cry? You cry out, Abba, Father. So here the issue is you are adopted into the family of God. Stand strong. You know who your Father is. You have nothing to fear. Same thing, Ephesians 1. He predestined us for adoption to himself as sons to Jesus Christ, according to the purpose of his will. So the purpose of predestination is to adopt the elect. Adoption is at the center of that. But clearly, we have been predestined, or we have been adopted by our Heavenly Father. And this doctrine gets its genesis in the Old Testament, obviously in Ezekiel, but we can really go back to the story of Moses and the Exodus. If we had time, we would look at Exodus 3. But let me throw up Exodus 4. The Lord said to Moses, when you go back to Egypt, see that you do before Pharaoh all the miracles I have put in your power. But I will harden his heart so that he will not let the people go. Now notice, God speaks of Israel as the people. Let my people go, Moses will say. So the word people is sort of a distance, isn't it? The people. But this changes. And then you shall say to Pharaoh, this is the Lord, Israel is my firstborn son. And I say to you, let my son go that he may serve me. If you refuse to let him go, I will kill your firstborn son. And remember, Moses is the adopted son of Pharaoh. But here we find out he's the son of the father. This is what makes the story of Moses so intriguing. The word Moses in Egypt means son of. There's no qualifier. Who is his father? He's the son of who? So we get Egyptian pharaohs like Ra Moses, Ramesses, Thut Moses, Ah Moses, who I think was the pharaoh of the Exodus. But he's Moses. And so the text is, whose son is he? Will he choose to be the son of Pharaoh or the son of the father? By the way, there's a third father there. It's Jethro. He forsakes the first father when he kills the slave drivers. Then he has to forsake the second father, Jethro, in order to be obedient to his true father. So it's Moses is the son of the father. But this is really, I think, the real genesis of this language. That Israel has been adopted by God, and it's illustrated for us by Ezekiel here. And then if you look at the Exodus story, what happens is that God demonstrates his fatherly love for them. He takes slaves and he turns them into sons. Slaves need to be redeemed. Sons need to be adopted. And so you can see the mixing of the metaphor, adoption through propitiation. And from this moment on, he acts like their father. He provides for them in the desert. He protects them from enemies. He disciplines them when they rebel, and he loves them unconditionally. And so Hosea, remember the story of Hosea with Gomer and all that. We get this language. When Israel was a child, I loved him. It's interesting. Now he used the masculine. It's a son. But here in Ezekiel, it's feminine because it's a bride. It's neither here nor there. Out of Egypt I called my son. I'll just pause you there. Does that sound familiar? Out of Egypt I called my son? Matthew quotes it in the Nativity. You remember that Jesus goes down to Egypt. Now, this verse has nothing to do with Jesus, but it has everything to do with Jesus. Because Jesus retells the story of Israel. What's the story of Jesus? Who is his father? Some say it's Joseph, but there is that rumor out there. Mary was unfaithful. Later, Celsus, an early critic of Christianity, claimed that Mary was assaulted by a Roman soldier. Who's the father of Jesus? Look, I'm just asking questions. And at Jesus' temptation, what's the question? Or what's the accusation? If you are the Son of God, you don't need to go hungry. I remember a story where the Father fed his sons in the wilderness. He's letting you starve. Isn't that cool? Jesus is a true and better Moses. We got to keep going. Yet it was I who taught Ephraim to walk, says Israel. I took them up in my arms, but they did not know that I healed them. I led them with cords of kindness, with the bands of love, and I became to them as one who eases the yoke on their jaws. I bent down to them and fed them. That is fatherly love, isn't it? I protected, I provided, I soothed their sores, I was strong for them, I taught them and gave them wisdom, I did all of that. God was a good father. Out of Egypt I called them. Isaiah 63 says, "For you are our Father, O Yahweh, are our Father, our Redeemer from of old is your name." Again, this is Exodus language where you mix fatherhood with redemption. That's what Moses was proclaiming. So you see that mixing of metaphors. Now, of course, what did Israel do to deserve this relationship? Nothing. Again, you see this in Ezekiel. I saw you abandoned on the side of the road, and I felt pity for you, and I adopted you, and I raised you. Now, this, of course, brings us into the New Testament, where this is really developed even more. The connection between slaves and orphans still remains even in the New Testament. And so that becomes our story. We were slaves to sin. We were orphaned by sin and Satan. And so God redeems, God saves. If we had time, we would look at Galatians 3. We just don't have time for that. But what we need to see is that sin will make us orphans. And as orphans, we are in search of a father. And the beautiful doctrine of adoption is God says, come, eat, sit, you're welcome into this family. Sin makes us orphans, but we have to recognize that we are indeed orphans. But sin, of course, also enslaves us. But because of the gospel, we go from orphans to sons. And in that, we become joint heirs with Jesus. Isn't that a wonderful truth? So we get this in 1 John 3. See what kind of love the Father has given to us, that we should be called children of God. And so we are. Man, that's worth meditating on tonight, isn't it? Look, if only thing you did for the next week was meditate on one verse of the Bible, that's a good week spent right there. See what love the Father has given to us. We should be called children of God. And we are. Beloved, there's that word again. He's the beloved disciple. We are God's children now. Right now, we're God's children. And we know that when He appears, we'll be just like Him. We'll be just like Him. I joked earlier how our daughter is turning into me. That's not what I prayed for. God doesn't always answer to prayers the way you want Him to. Please, Lord, make her like her mother, but keep the boys away. You know, that's been my prayer. But our children do that, don't they? Every single one of us, whether you're a mom or a dad, you got married and you're like, I heard my dad say that. I heard my mom say that. Oh, please don't let that be happening to me. And then you became a parent. I am turning into them, right? So what's the hope as adopted children? We don't stay in our blood. We grow into maturity and we become just like our Father. Because we shall see Him as He is. Oh, that's good. Daddy's coming home. Oh, that's good news, isn't it? It's the beautiful doctrine of adoption. And as you can see, Christians have taken the doctrines of redemption, slaves are set free, and they said, why do we have slaves? That's a radical idea. No other movement was asking questions like that in antiquity until the Christians looked upon the cross and said, I was slaved, set free. Israel was enslaved and set free. Let all the slaves go free in society. You see that orthodoxy leads to orthopraxy. And then you think, okay, well, I'm a slave that's been turned into a son. Wait, I'm a son. I'm a daughter of God. not by birth, but by adoption. And if the Father loves me enough to bring me into his home, a home that is not mine, there's a lot of orphans running around here. And so what the early church did is they lived in the culture, and many of them perhaps were guilty of this in their church, of what the Romans called exposing their children. I read to you the letter earlier from 1 BC, where if it's a girl, just expose it. You take it out, the baby out the wilderness, and you let the animals have it. It's appalling to us, but that was very common. You didn't think anything of it. Guess what the Christians started doing? They found those babies and they brought them home. That's one of the ways they grew their church. They started doing radical things like that. You want to grow your kids program? Go out into the woods and get kids who have been abandoned. They did this with disease as well. When plagues would hit a city, the rich would flee. And you know what the Christians did? They basically got the wheelbarrows out and they went to the city fountain where all the sick, the plagued people congregated, because at least they had access to water. And they picked them up, brought them into a wealthy member's home, and they took care of them. They were hospitable to them. Hospital. This is where hospitals come from, that and the Roman soldiers. And what they found was taking care of the sick increases the chances of survival. Christian love figured that out. You've seen how our theology shapes our practice. And this is certainly true of orphans. And so we get this with poor and orphans, all this. Just real quick. Assyria shall not save us. We will not ride on horses, and we will say no more, our God, to the work of our hands. In you, the orphan finds mercy. I'm starting to put it all together. In John, Jesus says, I will not leave you as orphans. I'm coming for you. And he's going to go to the cross. I'm not going to leave you. I'm not going to leave you. Finally, James, religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this. Now, notice that language. I never noticed this. God the Father. He could have said, religion that is pure and undefiled before God is this. But he throws in the theological language of the fatherhood of God. God is your Father. And he's a rich Father. Take care of those who are in your physical, who your spiritual state is their physical reality. Take care of orphans and widows in their affliction. Well, that's good. I never picked up on that. So while often we associate adoption with couples who struggle with infertility, throughout history, it was just Christians who took care of foster kids and adopted kids. And rightly so. This is a serious challenge we have in the modern world. I know we're running late. Can I give you an area that maybe Christians haven't been thinking about, but I think we need to? We can think of foster care and adoption stuff. That's true and right and good. Can I add something else Christians need to think more seriously about, but I don't think we are? And that is that right now there are perhaps millions, if not more than, worldwide, almost certainly more, millions of fertilized eggs frozen. You realize that there have been kids who have given birth to their siblings. I know you're going to take you a second to figure that out, ain't you? You see, when Tammy was born, she was born through IVF. But Tammy's parents had multiple eggs fertilized. And Tammy was implanted, but they left the other fertilized eggs in a freezer. Tammy is now 25 years old and wants to be a mom. So she went and got her sister, who's been frozen in time for 25 years, had those eggs implanted in her, and she gave birth to her sister, who is now her daughter. It's a brave new world, isn't it? Google it. I'll send you the chapter I wrote about it in one of the books. It's yeah. 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 And ask yourself, okay, so what do we do with millions of fertilized eggs? What do we do with it? This was a big discussion during the George W. Bush administration. What President Bush did was he said, we will allow stem cell research. You may remember this language, but not embryonic stem cell research. And the difference is stem cells. You can get them from your skin. The term's leaving me. That the baby is in the womb. That you placenta. Thank you. That's loaded with stem cells. And you can take that placenta into science and they'll do stem cells. Stem cells has cured many people of cancer, including a pastor here in Frankfurt. He's retired now. That's yes. Yeah. That's exactly right. I didn't think of that. Yes, that's exactly right. Embryonic stem cell is when you take one of these frozen eggs and you destroy the fertilized egg and you do experiments on babies. Yeah. Moeller talked about that today. I think it was today on the briefing about that. The term is leaving me. It's like I forgot how to talk all of a sudden. That's bothering me. That's bothering me. It's right on the tip of my tongue. But anyways, yeah. And it's being sold as, well, you don't want your child to have Down syndrome. But what you're going to get is, well, I want my child to have a high IQ and be athletic. Well, I mean, they're telling you that we're turning reproduction into a factory line. And that is not good at all. So as we think about adoption and stuff, we're in the bioethics world that is really difficult. But one of the things that President Bush did promote, it was called snowflake babies. You can adopt embryos. So it would be IVF, but for the purpose of, I'm going to adopt a baby that is frozen in time. And that's something that Christians have been asked to think about lately.
And there was a conference, or was it your birthday? It was like its birthday. It was like frozen fertilized back in 2000, and then they went so like 26-year-old.
Yeah.
That would eliminate the problem of women being too old to have babies.
Well, you mentioned that. I'm going to tweak that because you're exactly right. One of the leading groups using frozen embryos, largely abandoned or created by science, are homosexual couples who can't conceive otherwise. So if you have a lesbian couple, they want to go through the process of pregnancy, it's IVF, but they cannot produce their own egg, fertilized egg. And so you go shopping and you run the test that Jennifer's talking about. Surrogacy is another one. So here's the thing with surrogacy. Can we stick around just 2 more minutes? The thing about surrogacy is renting the wombs of women. It's anti-woman. It's anti-woman in terms of the way I've been told my whole life how to treat women and what feminism is supposed to be all about. What you're now doing is you're turning women into wombs, and you're turning them into slaves. But this is being celebrated by those who have decried Christians and what they think about men and women and all that sort of stuff. That's my point. It's rich men targeting desperate poor women. That's abuse. Maybe. But the womb is to be a sacred place where the two that became one are now becoming many. And a mother's womb is the first home a child knows. And it is right, that baby is right next to that mother's heart. Like that is God-given. And now what we're doing is we're renting that womb. We live in a brave new world, broken world. And I think Scripture is clear. So now you're going to leave here all sad and panicky about the culture we live in. I don't do a lot of cultural stuff here, but I think this text sort of demands it. The ugliness of what this describes is the ugliness of what we're seeing in our culture now. And I believe that it is Christians who have the answer. And it's why the decline of Christianity, we're seeing these issues pop up a lot more. Okay, I've done more than you probably wanted, but I think this is an issue that does come up in the text. Well, I have really wore you all out today.
One thing not talked about on the news, like that, what kind of people live in New York? They vote or they just let things happen?
Oh well, it's
Play